Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 547. 547. September 13th, 2018, Thursday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Well, yesterday's video got uploaded, but it wasn't until 5 o'clock or 5:30 or something. Something like that. Thanks again to our good friends at Spectrum, who can't seem to get their act together. Hopefully, this video will be uploaded in the morning as usual. Let's cross our fingers and hope for the best. Former NSA Director Mike Rogers has disputed a report that was published in May of 2017 alleging that President Trump asked him to push back against the FBI's collusion investigation. Rogers said, quote, "I never had a discussion with the POTUS, President of the United States, about collusion, was never directed or coerced to do anything." When he was asked why he waited so long to dispute the report, Rogers said, quote, "If I spent my time shooting down inaccurate media reports, I'd never get anything done," unquote. Yeah. And, of course, it also pretty much disputes something Comey said, because Comey had alleged the same. So he's shooting down basically this report, and this May 2017 report may have been regarding the Comey testimony because it was the same month. So I guess that's what Rogers is talking about. So it appears that Rogers now, he's retired, and he was at a speaking engagement. So it appears that Rogers is kind of getting out there and speaking. We still don't know to what extent or degree that he has talked to Congress and any of the committees investigating, but we certainly know that Mike Rogers was one of the good guys. It's very, very likely, we certainly believe, that it was Mike Rogers who alerted Trump to the fact that he was being spied on, because the day after Rogers went to Trump Tower to have a conversation with Trump alone, the very next day Trump moved his entire operation out of Trump Tower. We also know that Mike Rogers has never really stood with Clapper and Brennan and Comey on the IC report. And of course now we have him backing away, pushing back on this accusation that Trump was possibly asking or directing or coercing Rogers to push back on the Mueller investigation, which he is now publicly denying. I think Mike Rogers is a good guy. I think we may find out a lot more from him in the months or years to come as this Spygate unravels and the truth comes out. I think Rogers is at some point going to be offering key witness testimony to what he knew. And he knew a lot. He was the head of the NSA. Well, it appears that Saggy Daniels is getting ready to spill more Trump dirt in her new, soon-to-be-released memoirs. Does anybody want to have anything to do with the memoirs of Saggy Daniels? I thought Saggy's 60 Minutes of Fame were up. Isn't she gone now? I thought Saggy was done. Apparently she's not done. She still thinks people care about her memoirs or any of her ridiculous accusations about Trump. If she had anything to say about Trump, she would have already said it by now. She can only conjure up more lies, and she'll probably be paid very well to do so. I mean, nobody's going to buy her memoirs. I think everyone knows that, but that won't stop some rich liberal from paying her a fortune to make any allegation. Doesn't matter what it is. There's an election coming up, and lies are worth big money. If you got big boobs, big saggy boobs, and you can tell big lies, you can probably make a lot of cash. Big old saggy ones. No thanks, Saggy. We're not buying. Uh-oh. Democratic candidate for governor of New York, Cynthia Nixon, is demanding that the Democratic National Committee and Tom Perez address the mailers that were sent out to her district accusing her of anti-Semitism. She's trying to figure out whether this came straight from the Mario Cuomo's campaign, or whatever his name is. It's definitely Cuomo. I'm not sure which Cuomo. But she's running against Cuomo for governor of New York. And, of course, he's running as the establishment Democrat. She's running as the sort of Bernie bro type, far left-wing nutcase Democrat who wants to abolish ICE, wants to have sanctuary cities in New York, wants to raise taxes, wants to unroll everything Trump has done on regulation. She's completely whacked out of her mind, Cynthia Nixon, and the DNC is obviously trying to stop her. So she is very angry that they sent out mailers in her district that accused her of being anti-Semitic. And she is trying to figure out, she knows that Cuomo had to be involved because it was his campaign, but she believes that Tom Perez and the DNC may have also been involved, and she wants some answers from Tom Perez and the DNC as to whether or not they were involved in those nasty mailers accusing her of being anti-Semitic. We'll find out. They're going to lie, Miss Nixon, but that shouldn't be any surprise to you because you and all your friends lie to each other all the time. So here you see, of course, we know that the establishment Democrats are trying to stop the Bernie Bro or Ocasio-Cortez type socialist Democrats. They're trying to stop them. So the infighting within the Democratic Party has never stopped. That battle has not ended. It's not really even been addressed honestly. They've never really come out and publicly said to that left wing of their base exactly what they did to Bernie. They've never really made a true apology for all the things that they did, and they never, ever will. They never will. The Gateway Pundit is reporting that Christopher Steele was working with British MI6 during the 2016 presidential campaign. This coming from well-placed intelligence sources. They're saying that he was working for them at the same time that he was compiling the dossier. This puts into dispute the idea that Steele left the MI6 in 2008. Steele apparently was also meeting with Russia's SVR, that's the Foreign Intelligence Services. Also the Russian FSB, which is the Russian Federal Security Service. Now, if we find out that the FBI knew that Steele was collaborating, communicating with these Russian intel agencies, then they are also again in big trouble because it is a blatant violation of U.S. laws against espionage. That means that they would have been using Christopher Steele as a source, as a confidential informant, at the same time they knew that he was in cahoots with these Russian intelligence agencies. Now, we know for a fact, and has been reported many times, that Christopher Steele was absolutely passing information that he was getting during 2016 as he was working for Confusion GPS, that he was passing, and probably the FBI, that he was passing information, meeting with actual official British intelligence and British government officials. So he was definitely meeting, not former intelligence and government officials, current British intelligence government people. Steele was meeting with them. And you can be assured that all the top-level British politicians and such all knew everything that was going on with this stuff going on with Christopher Steele, who he was working for, trying to take down Trump with the dossier. This was one big conspiracy, one big criminal conspiracy, which deeply involves the current British government, or the British government at that time, which I guess would have been Cameron at that time, or Theresa May. I'm not sure whether it was Theresa May or Cameron. It may have been. It's hard to tell because the transition happened right in that same time frame. But regardless, they probably both knew and were quite aware. Tony Blair, other people like that connected to high levels of the British government, Mr. Breedlove, and all the rest. They were all quite aware of what Christopher Steele was doing. Not only that, probably very well aware of what Mr. Halper and also Alexander Down the Hatch Downer. They're all in cahoots with current and former British government officials and other type connected elitists in the high echelons of the power structure, both in the U.S., probably in the U.K., Ukraine, Australia. It was one big, fat, global conspiracy against Trump. Not just an American conspiracy, a global conspiracy. Ultimately, Christopher Steele is going to have a lot of questions to answer, as are a lot of other people. And the government of the UK is not going to avoid being exposed in this. There's no way you can. Too many of the activities that were taking place in and around the UK and Italy and the Ukraine. Too many things were going on the other side of the pond. We know about John Brennan, Mr. Potato Head's close association in friendship with high-level British intelligence people, government officials. We know about the Right Reverend Clinton's close association with Mr. Downer and other high-level British government officials. We know that there were CIA officials who were stationed there at the London embassy, who were obviously, this information was obviously making its way to them because they were the intelligence people stationed in London. So if Chris Steele is passing this stuff to British government agents, British political figures, certainly it's flowing through the intelligence networks, which means it's flowing into the networks of the British intelligence, and that therefore it would find its way into American intelligence assets who would have been stationed in London. One of them is now the current CIA director. She was stationed there. Bob Woodward. Bob Woodward has been an FBI asset since the 1970s. Says who? Says Sidney Blumenthal. And how do we know that? Because of an email that he sent the Rotten Reverend Clinton. The email was dated November 10th, 2012. This is in the Gateway Pundit. So they're having a conversation, and I think it had to do with about the time of Benghazi. And I think that the Rotten Reverend Clinton and the Obama administration were looking for reporters to cover their asses for the crimes that they committed in Benghazi. They were trying to find out who was on their team, who they could count on to carry their lies. And I think that Woodward's name came up, at which point Sidney Blumenthal sends the Rotten Reverend Clinton this email and says, hey, Cy Hirsch is very connected and knows a lot. And he told my father that he knew very well that Bob Woodward was connected to and was an asset, a source, an asset, and a mouthpiece for the FBI back in the 70s and even during the time of Watergate. During the time of Watergate, he says that Bob Woodward had begun working for the FBI as some kind of an asset. So this is Sidney Blumenthal basically telling Hillary Clinton on November 10th of 2012 regarding who they could count on to cover their ass in Benghazi. He's suggesting to the Right Reverend Clinton, don't be so sure that we can count on Woodward, because Woodward takes his marching orders from people in FBI. Now, at the time, it appears that they weren't so confident that everyone at the FBI or in the intelligence community was going to cover their butt on the Benghazi thing. Everyone was hedging their bets to see which way that was going to go. And that is what Sidney Blumenthal was informing Hillary Clinton of on November 10th of 2012. Not to count on Bob Woodward, because he does what he's told. He works for the FBI. He's an FBI asset and has been since the 70s. Well, we have more texts from Peter's been stroking us and Loose Lisa Page. They just keep on coming. Now, this one is from a discussion that they're having on September the 2nd of 2016. And in this particular discussion, they're talking about the fact that Page is telling Peter's been stroking us that they have got the okay to go ahead and co-write another story, which would be an op-ed, and it would appear in the Washington Post. And Loose Lisa Page is telling Peter's been stroking us that they need to make the writing more folksy, so it's not like a news article. So here they are again discussing the fact that they got the okay and that would probably came from McCabe, would be my guess, because that's who she was working for. So she's saying, okay, we got the okay to write another story, which would appear as an op-ed in the Washington Post. And she's suggesting that they need to make the writing a little more folksy, dumb it down a little bit for the stupid folks, so that it doesn't sound like a news article. Hard to believe. Well, we have a liberal professor who has shot himself in protest of Trump. This protester in Nevada, this professor in Nevada shot himself in the arm with a .22 caliber pistol in protest of Trump. Mark J. Bird shot himself on campus. Bird is facing charges for firing a gun in a gun-free zone and possessing a dangerous weapon on school property. Now, this is something I can get behind. Here we have liberals now deciding to shoot themselves. Now, generally, I wouldn't be an advocate of this type of behavior. But if you have Trump derangement syndrome, it's probably fatal. There may be no recovery from it. It's a form of I guess we could say that it's a terminal form of mental illness. And in a lot of ways, you could look at this as a sympathetic sort of thing, or at least an empathetic thing, where people putting themselves out of their Trump derangement syndrome misery. And I am totally in support of people putting themselves out of their misery. Whether they do it with a .22, although I'd recommend something more along the lines of maybe at least a .38. Maybe you can go up to a 9 mil. And shooting yourself in the arm is not going to be terribly effective. You may want to go for the center, the dead center of the chest. Is a much better place to aim if you're going to go ahead and relieve yourself of your Trump derangement syndrome. Although, let's not forget the other options here. There are high buildings you can jump off of. You could jump in front of a bus. You could hook up a hose to your exhaust pipe in your garage. You could use some sort of a sharp object and bludgeon yourself. You could bludgeon yourself. You could bang your head against a concrete wall for 15 minutes. That would probably do the job. There's a lot of different ways that you could handle this. There's obviously many types of poisons that are available right off the shelf that you could go home and drink. So if you're a liberal with Trump derangement syndrome and you feel you just can't take it anymore, and that you're in total misery, and you realize you have a terminal disease that you can never be cured from, and you're in complete misery, I absolutely, believe me, it touches my heart. It warms my heart immensely. And I would be absolutely supportive of any liberal with Trump derangement syndrome who feels the need to arrive at a more peaceful place, a place of eternal serenity, where you can be free of such mental and psychological bondage, having to live in a country run by someone who's, of course, driving the economy like it's never been driven before, fixing bad trade deals, securing the border, bringing back patriotism to the country, making people proud to be Americans again. I can understand to a liberal these are just almost nearly impossible for these people to live in an environment such as this. And it's probably very, very painful, psychologically torturous. And so, yes, again, I mean, if you feel the need as a liberal with Trump derangement syndrome to relieve your suffering, I absolutely support you with total empathy to take whatever measures you must take to relieve your pain and suffering. I'm absolutely with you 100%. And to Mr. Byrd, aim a little more toward the center of the chest next time, sir. My guess is you're still in misery. You can fix that. Ocasio-Cortez is now slamming. Well, actually, she's been caught looking like an idiot once again. It's not hard when you're Ocasio-Cortez because she's an idiot. So here she was slamming Uber in support of New York City taxi drivers. The only problem with that is that Cortez has spent thousands of dollars on 160 Uber rides between April and June herself. Not only that, her campaign spent $4,000 on Uber rides, along with another $2,500 on 90 rides with a competing company called Juno, another Uber-style service. So here you have again Ocasio-Cortez coming out and campaigning against something, protesting against something that she's in fact very much a part of. She'll say anything. She's obviously an idiot. She's a compulsive liar. And she's a nutty left-wing commie. And she is the future of the Democratic Party. There you go. She should be the poster girl for the Democratic Party. Problem is, she's got so much competition. You've got Mad Max, Miss Klobuchar, who we talked about yesterday, this other nutcase, Cynthia Nixon, the Rotten Reverend, Obama, who's out there committing public suicide once again. I mean, it's hard to say who's the leader of that party. They're all just so dysfunctional and mind-numbed. I don't know what to think about the modern Democratic Party anymore. It's just a mess. It's just a mess. But Nancy Pelosi just came out yesterday and said she is going to be the speaker. The Democrats are going to take over Congress, and she is going to be the speaker. What does she know? Maybe they've already got those voting machines already set. I mean, they're owned by George Soros and Mitt Romney. Broadway actress Carol Cook, never heard of her. Broadway actress Carol Cook, who made a comment about Trump saying that where is John Wilkes Booth when you need him, got a big surprise yesterday. She got a visit from the Secret Service. Yep, they take that kind of stuff seriously. According to the Secret Service, they investigate every threat against the president. She's just a crazy old woman, in my opinion. But, crazy old women can make threats against the president and get visits from the Secret Service, too. They're not biased. Mark Meadows says that the Petersman Strokers and Lisa Page texts are just the tip of the iceberg. And he's demanding that Rodenstein release everything. Right. The reason that Rodenstein has been, and Ray, but mainly Rodenstein, has been fighting the release of all this stuff, and the reason we're still getting day by day, leak by leak by leak, or a few texts here, a few texts there, we should have had every bit of this stuff a long time ago. This stuff should have been given to IG Huckleberry Horowitz, but they've been sitting on it and hiding it. Why? Rosenstein's trying to protect himself. I mean, Rodenstein is highly compromised in this whole plan. He's up to his eyeballs, right along with Uncle Bob the Executioner and all their friends. And certainly Rodenstein will be indicted for his crimes. No question in my mind. So, yeah, Mark Meadows, you're right, but it ain't going to happen. The only way you're going to get to see everything and immediately on demand is when someone appoints a special counsel or a presidential commission. And if you're waiting for a special counsel, who would do that? Either Sessions or Rodenstein. Well, Rodenstein certainly isn't going to do it. And Sessions has recused himself from everything having to do with the 2016 election, hacking, Russia, Hillary, emails, everything, all that kind of stuff. So it's not going to happen, as far as I can see, until after the midterms when Trump fires Sessions, unless in the next month and a half Sessions, drops a bunch of indictments on people. But if he doesn't, he's not going to be long for this world. After the midterm elections, he'll be gone. Probably Rodenstein along with him, and maybe Christopher No-Shit Sherlock Ray. CBS. Well, it appears another executive at CBS is going to be fired. And this is the guy who heads up 60 Minutes. He is the executive producer of 60 Minutes, chief executive at 60 Minutes, and CBS News. His name is Jeff Fager, F-A-G-E-R. He is out. Out. He's being accused of groping women at parties and tolerating an abusive workplace. He was, of course, appointed by Les Moonves, who's just recently been given the boot. Unbelievable. This whole Me Too movement has done nothing more than drive all these hardcore left-wingers like Weinstein and others, friends of Hillary Clinton, out into the sunshine, and they're now being prosecuted or fired or what have you for their crimes. Amazing that about 99% of these people are left-wingers, and amazing how many of them in the media. Yet all these liberal hacks continue to go out and try to cover up all this. They don't want to talk about any of this. You won't see this stuff being reported hardly ever. But when you look at the list of media personalities from Charlie Rose right on down the line who've been booted, including heads of networks and everything else, you would think this would be major important news. And you would think that these liberal women who are on these networks, who are always talking badly about Trump and what he does, you notice how they never talk about the sexual violations that have been going on against them, that they're very much aware of, and their friends. They let that all slide. Hypocrites. Total hypocrites. So, we're talking just a second ago about Mark Meadows and giving this letter to Rodenstein. Rodenstein will completely, right into the can. Rodenstein has no interest in getting to the truth, because the truth will, of course, reveal his criminal activity in this conspiracy. But, we've been doing what? We got 547 videos now. 547 videos, and that's when I started making videos. I was actually following this story for months before that. Really, we pretty much know what happened at this point. It's not really a question anymore of what happened. Pretty much everything that we suspected and believed a year and 3-4 months ago, we now know for sure, because we now have a lot of the evidence. We know that they rigged the Rotten Reverend Clinton investigation into her violations of the Espionage Act and mishandling classified information. That was an obstruction of a federal case. We know that they tried to destroy President Trump by destroying people around him as he was campaigning for president. Then once he became president, they tried to destroy his presidency. They're still trying. They haven't stopped. We know about the illegal 702 queries. We know about the illegal FISA searches, the way that they went around the FISA court using obscure law. Obama and Lynch signed off on it, right along with Rosenstein, Yates, Comey, and all the rest. All guilty of lying to the FISA court, lying on a FISA application. We know about sending agent provocateurs into the campaign to frame people. We know about working with foreign governments, foreign agents, including, and apparently at this point, it means indirectly using Russians as well. It means an entire, gigantic, massive criminal conspiracy. That is what we know happened. And all the evidence of that is pouring out day after day after day. Now, the only reason that the trials are not being held and the whole thing is not playing itself out in court right now is because the left-wing media refuses to cover the true story, because you have the deep state fighting back against it, and you have most of the deep state players who will be in charge of bringing about these criminal indictments are part of the criminal conspiracy. Sessions, we don't know. Is he part of the criminal conspiracy, or is he just inept? We don't really know at this point. It's still unclear about Jeff Sessions. But we do know one thing's for sure. About a year and a half ago, when we started looking at all this and speculating on all this and believed a lot of this was what was happening, we are now proven correct. It is true. Everything that we believed and much more. And this is now crystal clear from the evidence that continues to pour out every single day. There's no doubt that we are going to get to the bottom of it. The media can't run from the truth forever. The deep staters are just barely hanging on by a thread. And if the Republicans hold on to the House, especially if Jim Jordan is the speaker after the midterms, the shit is going to hit the fan. It's all coming out, my friends. It's all coming out. We will be vindicated. We will be exonerated. And the criminals will be prosecuted. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hope this video pops up in the morning. Thank you, guys. See you next time around. Bye.